I'm very grateful to you all for sticking around after so many very clever presentations. And this is not a clever academic book. It involves a lot of quotes from a new genre called mummy lit, which you'll recognise by the pink covers on the. You can normally buy them on 3 for 2s in Waterstones, and they're generally written by mothers who are journalists who've had children and then write novels about their lives as mothers of children. And I just want to, I mean, it does have some academic references in as well, I hasten to add, but I just thought I would start from a quote from one of these mummy-lit authors, who's a woman called Jane Green, writing in The Other Woman in 2004, and it's a sort of story about the mother-in-law from hell. And she says, "I love being a mother, and now that I'm experiencing the joys of female friendship, I love being a woman. I love the way that you can share anything and everything with your girlfriends, that you are not judged but accepted but for who you are. And yet, despite the support that we give one another, it has been a shock to discover that raising a child is the one area in which women are absolutely not supportive of one another, not unless you find kindred spirits who agree wholeheartedly with your philosophy, whatever your philosophy may be." And the reason why I make quite a lot of use in Standing Up to Supernanny of quotes from these kind of novels is not because they're very literary or insightful in that way, but because I do think that quotes like this contain some degree of insight which I find quite intriguing, and that's namely that the question of why is it that modern parents, especially mothers, go about doing parenting in a way that they intuitively feel is wrong. So Mummy Lit, for example, contains lots of self-parody about familiar aspects of modern intensive parenting culture. There's a lot of kind of sort of musing on the obsession with food, the obsession with your children's accomplishments, the kind of problem of the bitchy competitiveness that you experience with other mothers, the problem of over-supervising your kids and running around after them and basically subsuming your life into theirs. And you know, the novels are kind of really actually critical of these tendencies, but they certainly don't defend them. I mean, it is done in this kind of self-parody style. Why on earth do I behave like this? Ha ha ha. And so what provoked me to write Standing Up to Supernanny and to use the popular toddler taming TV show Supernanny as the key metaphor for the book was not just to kind of look at the elements of parenting culture and policy that I see as problematic, but to kind of look at why those ideas seem to be so quickly absorbed and internalised by parents and what that means for the kind of parents that we become. The problematic areas of parenting culture and policy that I focus on in the book, as indeed do the other contributors to the book, will be fairly familiar to those here who've worked with the Parenting Culture Studies seminar series. And, you know, I say again, as I did last night, I'm very much indebted to the work of this group in understanding and explaining some of these trends. I mean, just to kind of run through them in brief, I think the main ones are the culture of intensive parenting, which demands that parents' lives and emotions are focused around doing what's assumed to be best for the child. The related idea of parental causality, which assumes that every little thing a parent does has a significant impact on the development, behaviour and happiness of the child. And the trend towards risk and responsibility aversion by adults as a group, which encourages heightened anxiety amongst parents about children's safety and well-being, and fuels the idea that parenting is something that parents do alone to their children, so that they can't and they shouldn't rely on backup from adults around them. And taken together, all of these things contribute to a situation where parenting is perceived and experienced as very difficult, important, stressful and isolating. And it's not surprising that parents raising children in those circumstances do become vulnerable to pressure to seek increasing expert advice or quasi-expert advice, as in Supernanny, and official support in terms of doing parenting right. And so I think, you know, the impact of this kind of parenting culture on how parents behave is important. But I think what's equally important, and what is reflected a lot of the time through the discussion in popular culture, is the impact on how parents feel about themselves, about their kids, and about the generational project of raising children in general. So if you read, as I do, late at night, these swathes of bad novels, or you know, popular psychology, official advice, they're kind of replete with discussions about maternal feelings. You know, women talk about being torn between work and home, depressed after the birth of their children, resentful of their partner or their kids, jealous of other mothers, guilty. I mean, that's probably the key kind of word that comes out in this discussion. Mothers always feel guilty about everything. And the kind of overwhelming sense you get when you read this stuff is one of a real kind of deep ambivalence about parenthood, a sense that it's impossible to reconcile the adult life that you thought you had and the adult life that you want with actually being a parent. So you end up sort of witnessing this struggle to accommodate not just to the practical demands of parenthood, but to the emotional upheaval of suddenly having to be someone else. Why is this? I mean, this is just very kind of brief shorthand, but why I think it is that culture in general, or what we might call therapy culture, transmits the idea to people as they are growing up that what really matters is how you feel about your life, that you do what's good for you and that you feel good about yourself, that you're prepared to let go of commitments and relationships that make you feel uncomfortable. I mean, there's a sort of trend in that becomes the kind of individual that you are. Then you have a baby, and parenting culture suddenly transmits the apparently contradictory idea that you should see your relationship with your child, in fact, as the only significant thing in your life, and that you should gain your sense of satisfaction and self just through doing what's best for your child. And if you don't feel that way, that's actively harmful to your child. It results in, allegedly, weak attachments, a deficit of warmth and affection, a failure to bond, all of these things. So you end up with this kind of question: how do you reconcile the kind of person you are with the kind of parent that you feel you should be, according to the expectations of parenting culture? And I should just stress that I don't think this is, what you end up with is not a discussion about whether you love your kids or not. I mean, that's not really what it's about at all. I mean, it's not about the kids. I mean, what you end up with through Mummy Lit and other popular culture is more a discussion about how you feel about yourself and the degree to which you, the individual, most starkly expressed in mothers, can manage to conform to a wider feelings rule that indicates how parents actually should be experiencing their life and articulating that experience. So, back to Supernanny in terms of why people watch Supernanny, what is the appeal of shows like Supernanny. There's a contribution in the book by Tracy Jensen, who's doing her doctoral thesis on why people watch Supernanny. Unfortunately, she was going to be here today, but she had an unforeseen childcare problem. Yeah, classic. So it's a real shame that she's not. But one of the things she highlights from her research is that you can't give one reason why people watch Supernanny, and she makes the point very compellingly that, you know, when there is this assumption that people watch Supernanny because they want advice, in that linear fashion, actually that's not, that's not accurate reason as to why they do it. But one of the many reasons I would say about why people kind of feel drawn to programmes such as Supernanny and other kind of discussions about sort of parenting and how to do it and everything, is that this is also a bit of a struggle about feelings. You know, people kind of watch Supernanny and they feel better about their own kids because they're not as bad as the ones on telly. They feel better about themselves as parents because they're not as inadequate as the ones that they're watching. And in a way, the kind of guidance that you're seeking through these programmes is not really about how to manage the practical problems of parenting, although, yes, the naughty step does become, the discipline method du jour. But it's about looking to see how other parents manage their emotions in dealing with the practical problems of parenting, how they kind of bring themselves into line. And it gives this sort of sense of affirmation that it's okay to feel imperfect. In fact, that's the desirable thing, We should all recognise that we're imperfect parents. It's okay to feel very ambivalent about your kids, actually, as long as you've bought into this feelings rule that really what matters is that you try harder to live up to the demands of parenting culture. So I suppose what I'm describing here is a process of emotional regulation and self-regulation according to an externally imposed feelings rule about the kind of parent that you feel you should be, which I don't think this rule can dictate exactly how people actually feel about their kids, but it certainly can shape how they talk about it and the basis on which they relate to other parents and the kind of dialogue that's then set off amongst adults about the project of raising children. And I do think that's a very real problem, not because I think parents should feel good about themselves whatever they do and however the kids are, and certainly not because I think there needs to be even more discussion about how raising children is a very hard and horrible thing to do in society today. I mean, there's far too much of that discussion already. But more because I think this kind of strange discourse contributes to a trend in which raising one's children, both on an individual and a generational level, is no longer something that's assumed to be part of what adults are and do. It's presented as it's actually becoming a set of learned behaviours and emotions that seek to encourage people to raise children despite themselves rather than because of themselves. So in this sense, the book's really about promoting the idea that family life is about who we are rather than the techniques and the behaviour that we employ, and making the argument that parenting in any meaningful sense needs to be considered as the relationship between adults and children in the family, rather than as an individual identity crisis that parents need to be trained to deal with as individuals and on their own. That's it.